Sorry. Just trying to put in some music. As soon as the tide receded from the causeway, I would make for the mainland, on foot, running, stumbling. I do not trust that leather-clad chauffeur, nor the well-behaved housekeeper. I dared not take any of the pale, ghostly maids into my confidence either, since they were his creatures at all. Once at the village, I would fling myself directly on the mercy of the gendarmerie. But could I trust them either? His forefathers had ruled this coast for 8 centuries. From this castle, whose moat was the Atlantic, might not the police, the advocates, even the judge all be in his service, turning his common blind eye to his vices, since he was my lord, whose word must be obeyed? Who on this distant coast would believe the white-faced girl from Paris, who came running to them with a shuddering tale of blood, of fear, of the ogre murmuring in the shadows? Or rather, they would immediately know it to be true, but were all honor bound to let me carry it no further. Assistance. My mother. I ran to the telephone, and the line, of course, was dead. Dead as his wives. Dun dun dun! A dark, thick darkness, unlit by any star, still glazed to the windows. Every lamp in my room burned. To keep the dark outside, yet it seemed still to encroach on me. To be present beside me, but as if masked by my lights, the night was like a permeable substance that could seep into my skin. I looked at the precious little clock made from hypocritical innocent flowers long ago in Dresden. The first, the hands had scarcely moved one single hour forward from when I first descended to that private slaughterhouse of his. Time was a servant too, who trapped me here in a night that would last until he came back to me, like a black sun on a hopeless morning. And yet the time might still be my friend. The hour, the very hour, set sail for New York. To know that in a few moments my husband would have left France, calmed my agitation a little. My reason told me I had nothing to fear. The tide that would take him away to the new world would let me out of the imprisonment of the castle. Surely I could easily evade the servants. Maybe I could buy a ticket at a railway station. Yet I was still filled with unease. I opened the lid of the piano. Perhaps I thought my own particular magic might help me. Now that I could create a pentacle of out of music that would keep me from harmful. If my music had first ensnared him, then might it not give me the power to free myself from him? Mechanically, I began to play, but my fingers were stiff and shaking. At first I could imagine nothing better than the exercises of Cernli, but simply the act of playing smoothly, and for solace, for the sake of harmonious rationality of its sublime mathematics, searched among his scores until I found the well-tempered clavier. I set myself the therapeutic task of playing all Bach's equations. Every one, I told myself, if I played them all through without one single mistake, the morning would find me once more a virgin. Crash of a dropped stick, He still had a cane. What else? Sly, cunning, he had returned. He was waiting for me outside the door. I rose to my feet. Fear gave me strength. Threw back my head defiantly. Come in! My voice astonished me by its firmness, its clarity. The door slowly, nervously opened. I saw not the massive, irredeemable bulk of my husband, but the slight, stooping figure of the piano tuner. And he looked far more terrified of me than my mother's daughter would have been of the devil himself. In the torture chamber, it seemed to me that I would never laugh again. Now, helplessly, laugh I did, with relief. And after a moment's hesitation, the boy's face softened. He smiled a little, almost in shame. Though they were blind, his eyes were singularly sweet. Forgive me, said John Yves. I know I've given you grounds for dismissing me, that I should be crouching outside your door at midnight, but I heard you walking about up and down. I sleep in a room at the foot of the west tower, and some intuition told me you could not sleep, and might perhaps pass the insomniatic hours at your piano. I could not resist it, so I stumbled over these. And he displayed the ring of keys I dropped outside my husband's office door, the ring from which one key was missing. Took them from him, looked around for a place to stow them, fixed on the piano stool as if to hide them would protect me. Still he stood smiling at me. How hard it was to make everyday conversation. It's perfect, I said. The piano, perfectly in tune. But he was full of loquacity, of embarrassment, as though I would only forgive him for his impudence if he explained the cause of it thoroughly. When I heard you play this afternoon, I thought I never heard such a touch, such technique. A treat for me to hear of a virtuoso. So I crept up to your door, humbly as a little dog might, madam, and put my key to the ear hole and listened, till my stick fell to the floor through a momentary clumsiness of mine, and I was discovered. He had the most touching and genuine smile. Perfectly in tune, I repeated. To my surprise, now I had said it, I found that I could not say anything else. I could only repeat, in tune, perfect in tune, over and over again. I saw a dawning surprise in his face. My head throbbed. To see him in his lovely blind humanity seemed to hurt me very piercingly somewhere in my breast. His figure blurred. The room swayed about me. At the dreadful revelation of that bloody chamber, there was a tender look that made me faint. When I recovered consciousness, I found I was lying in the piano tuner's arms. He was tucking the satin cushions from the piano stool under my head. You are in some great distress, he said. No bride should suffer so much so early in her marriage. Speech are the rhythms of the countryside, rhythms of the tide. Any bride brought to this castle should come ready, dressed in mourning. Should I bring a priest in a coffin with her? I said, what's this? It was too late to keep silent. If he too were one of my husband's creatures, at least he had been kind to me. So I told him everything. The keys, the interdiction, my disobedience, the room, the rack, the skull, the corpses, the blood. I can scarcely believe them, he said, wondering. That man, so rich, so well born. Here is proof, I said, tumbled the fatal key out of my hand, and out of my handkerchief on the silken bed. Oh, God, he said, I can smell the blood. He took my hand, pressed his arms about me, although he was scarcely more than a boy. I felt the great strength flow into me from his touch. We whisper all manner of strange tales up and down the coast, he said. There was a marquis once who used to hunt young girls on the mainland. He hunted them with dogs as though they were foxes. My grandfather had it from his grandfather. The marquis pulled the head out of his saddlebag and showed it to the blacksmith while the man was shoeing his horse. A fine specimen of the genus brunette, Guillaume, and it was the head of the blacksmith's wife. But in these more democratic times, my husband must travel as far as Paris, who is hunting in the salons. Fanny knew the moment I said it. Oh, madam, I thought all these were old wives' tales, chatterings of fools, spooks to scare bad children into good behavior. Yet how could you know, a stranger, that the old name for this place was the Castle of Murder? How could I know indeed, except that in my heart I'd always known its lord would be the death of me. Hark, said my friend suddenly, the sea has changed its key. It's be near morning, the tide is going down. He helped me up. I looked from the window towards the mainland, along the causeway where the stones gleamed wetly in the thin light of the end of the night, and with an almost unimaginable horror, a horror the intensity of which I cannot transmit to you, I saw in the distance, still far away, yet drawing moment by moment, inexorably near, the twin headlamps of his great black car, gouging tunnels through those shifting mist. My husband had indeed returned. This time it was no fancy. The keys, said Johnny. You must go back on the ring with the others, as though nothing had happened. The key was so caked with wet blood. I ran to my bath and held it under the hot tap. Crimson water swirled around down the basin, but as if the key itself were hurt, bloody took and stuck. The turquoise eyes of the dolphin taps winked at me derisively that they knew my husband had been too clever for me. Scrubbed the stain with my nail brushes, but still it would not budge. I thought how the car would be rolling silently towards the closed courtyard gate. The more I scrubbed the gate, the more vivid it grew the stain. The bell on the gatehouse would jingle. Porter's drowsy son would push back the patchwork quilt. Yawning, pulled the shirt over his head, thrust his feet into his sabots. Slowly. Open the door for your master as slowly as you can. Still the blood stain mocked the fresh water that spilled from the mouth of the layering dolphin. You have no more time, said John Hughes. He is here, I know it. I must stay with you. You shall not. I said, go back to your room now, please. He hesitated. I put an edge of steel in my voice, for I knew I must meet my lord alone. Leave me! As soon as I had gone, I dealt with the keys and went to my bedroom. Causeway was empty. John was correct. My husband had already entered the castle. Pulled the curtains close. Stripped off my clothes and pulled the bed curtains around me as a pungent aroma of Russian leather assured me that my husband was once dear. Him beside me. Dearest, with the most treacherous, lascivious tenderness, kissed my eyes and mimicking the new bride's newly awakened. I flung my arms around her, for on my seeming acquiescence depending my salvation. Da Silva of Rio outwitted me, he said wryly. My New York agent telegraphed La Havana and saved me a wasted journey. So we may resume our uninterrupted pleasures, my love. I did not believe one word of it. I knew had exactly behaved according to his desires. He had not brought me so that I should do so. I had been tricked in my own betrayal, so that inimitable darkness was whose source I had been compelled to seek in his absence. And now I had met that shattered reality of his that came to life only in his presence of its own atrocities, was paid the price of my new knowledge. Secrets of Pandora's box. But he had given me the box himself, knowing I must learn the secret. I had played a game in which every move was governed by my destiny as oppressive and omnipotent as himself. Since that destiny was himself, I was lost. Lost at that charade of innocence and vice in which he had engaged me. Lost as the victim loses to the executioner. His hand brushed my breast beneath the sheet. I strained my nerves, yet could not help but flinch from the intimate touch, where it made me think of the piercing embrace of the Iron Maiden and of his lost lovers in the fall. When he had saw my reluctance, his eyes veiled over him, yet his appetite did not diminish. His tongue ran over my red lips, already wet. Silent, mysterious, he moved away from me to draw off his jacket, took the gold watch from his waistcoat, and laid it on the dressing table. The good bourgeois scooped out his rattling loose change, and now, oh God! Next to me, a great play of patting his pockets viciously. Puzzled lips pursed, searching for something that he had mislaid, and turns to me with a ghastly, triumphant smile. But of course, I gave the keys to you. Your keys? Why, of course. Here, they're under the pillow. Wait a moment. What? No. Now, where can I have left them? I was whiling away the evening without you at the piano. I remember, of course, the music room. Brusquely, he flung my negligee of antique lace on the bed. Go and get them. Now, this moment, can I wait till the morning, my darling? Forced myself to be seductive. Saw myself pale, pliant as a plant that begs to be trampled underfoot. A dozen vulnerable, appealing girls reflected in as many mirrors, and I saw how he almost failed to resist me. He had come to me in bed. I would have strangled him then. But yes, no. No, I will not wait. Now! The unearthly light of dawn filled the room. I had only one previous dawn broken upon me in that vile place, and there was nothing for it but to go and fetch the keys from the music stool, and pray he would not examine them too closely. Pray to God that his eyes would fail him. They might be struck blind. When I came back into the bedroom carrying the bunch of keys that jangled at every step like a curious musical instrument, he was sitting on the bed in his immaculate shirt sleeves, his head sunk in his hands. It seemed to me he was in despair. Strange, in spite of fear in myself, made me whiter than my wrap, felt there emanent from him at that moment. A stench of absolute despair, rank and ghastly, as if the lilies which surrounded him had all at once began to fester, or the Russian leather of the scent were reverting to the elements of flayed hide and excrement of which it was composed. The chthonic gravity of his presence exerted a more tremendous pressure on the room, so that the blood pounded in my ears as if we had been precipitated to the bottom of the sea, beneath the waves that pounded against the shore. I held my life in my hands amongst those keys, and in them a moment would place it between his well-manicured fingers. Evidence of the bloody chamber had shown me I could expect no mercy. Yet when he raised his head and stared at me with his blind, shuttered eyes, as though he did not recognize me, I felt a terrified pity for him, for this man who lived in a strange, secret place, that if I loved him enough to follow him, I should have to die. The atrocious loneliness of that monster. My uncle had fallen from his eyes. His curling mane was disordered, as if he had run his hands through it in his distractions. Saw how he lost his impassivity and was now filled with suppressed excitement. The hand he stretched out for these counters in this game of love and death shook a little. The face that turned towards me contained a somber delirium that seemed to be compounded of a ghastly yet shame, and also of a terrible guilty joy as he naturally ascertained how I had sinned. That telltale saying had resolved itself into a mark the shape and brilliance of this heart on a playing card. He disengaged the key from the ring and looked at it for a while, solitary, brooding. "It is the key that leads to the kingdom of the imaginable," he said, his voice so low he had the timbre of certain great cathedral organs that seemed, when they played, to be conversing with God. God retained this "Oh, my love, my little love, who brought me a white gift of music," he said, almost as if grieving. "My little love, you'll never know how much I hate daylight." Then he sharply ordered, "Kneel!" I knelt before him and pressed the key lightly on my forehead, held it there for a moment, and felt a slight faint tingling of the skin, and yet, when I involuntarily glanced at the mirror and myself in the mirror, saw the heart-shaped stain had transferred itself onto my forehead, space between my eyebrows, like the cast mark of a Brahmin woman, the mark of Cain. And now the key gleamed as freshly as if it had been clipped it back on the ring, emitting that same heavy sigh as he had done when I had said that I would marry him. My virgin of Arpeggios, prepare yourself for martyrdom." "Which form shall it take?" I said. Decapitation," he whispered almost voluptuously. "Go and bathe yourself. Put on that white dress you wore to hear Tristan, and the necklace that prefigures your end. I shall take myself to my armory, my dear, to sharpen my great-grandfather's ceremonial sword. Servants? We shall have absolutely privacy for our last rites. I have really already dismissed them. Look out the window, you can see them going to the mainland." It was now the full pale light of morning, but it was grey, indeterminate. The sea had an oily, sinister look, a gloomy day on which to die. Along the causeway, I could see trooping every maid and scullion, every potboy and panscour, valet, laundress, and vassal worked in that great house, most on foot, a few on bicycles. Faceless housekeeper treads along the great basket in which, I guessed, she stole as much as she could ransack from the larder. Marquis must have given the chauffeur leave to borrow the motor for the day, for it went last of all, at a stately pace, as though the procession were a cortege, and the car already bore my coffin to the mainland for burial. But I knew no good Breton earth would cover me. Like a last faithful lover, I had another fate. "I have given them all a day's holiday to celebrate our wedding," he said, and smiled. However hard I stared at the receding company, see no sign of Jean-Yves, a latest servant hired but the preceding morning. "Go now, bathe yourself, dress yourself. Lustratory ritual and a ceremonial robing. After that, the sacrifice. Wait in the music room until I telephone for you." "No, my dear." He smiled as I recited, recalling the line was dead. "One may call inside the castle just as much as one pleases, but outside, never." I scrubbed my forehead with the needle brush as I scrubbed the key, but this red mark would not go away either, no matter what I did. Then I went to my dressing room and put on that white muslin shift costume of a victim of an auto da fe he had bought me to listen to the Leipzig in. 12 young women comb out, 12 listless sheaves of brown hair in the mirrors. Soon there would be none. Celebrities had surrounded me, exhaled now the odor of the withering. They looked like the trumpets of the angels of death. On the dressing room coiled a snake about to strike. and it will be choking. Almost lifeless, cold at heart, I descended the spiral staircase to the music room, but there I found I had not been abandoned. I can be of some comfort to you, the boy said, though not much use. Pushed the piano stool in front of the open window so that for so long as I could be able to smell the ancient, reconciling smell of the sea. In time will cleanse everything. Cover the old bones white, wash away the stains. The last little chambermaid had trotted along the causeway long ago, and now the tide, fated as I, came tumbling in, with crisp wavelets splashing on the old stones. You do not deserve this. He said. Who can I say what I deserve or no? He said, I've done nothing. There must be sufficient reason for condemning me. You disobeyed him, he said. That is sufficient reason for him to punish you. Only did what he knew I would. Like Eve, he said. The telephone rang a shrill imperative. Let it ring, but my lover lifted me up and set me on my feet. I knew in my senses the receiver felt heavy as earth. The courtyard, immediately. My lover kissed me. He took my hand. He would come with me if I would leave him. Courage. When I thought of courage, I thought of my mother. And I saw a muscle in my lover's face quiver. Hoofbeats, he said. I cast one last desperate glance from the window, and like a miracle, I saw a horse and rider galloping at the vertiginous speed like along the causeway. And although the waves crashed now high as the horse's fetlocks, the rider, her black skirts tucked up around her waist so she could ride hard and fast, crazy with horsewomen and widow's weeds. As the telephone rang again. Am I to wait all morning? Every moment, my mother drew nearer. She will not be too late, John is. Said yet he could not retain a note of hope, that though it must be so, yet it might not be so. The third intransigent call. Shall I come up from heaven to fetch you down, Saint Cecilia? You wicked woman, do you wish me to compound my crimes by desecrating my marriage bed? So I must go to the courtyard where my husband waited in his London tailored trousers and the shirt from Turnbull and Asser beside the mounting block within his hand the sword which his great-grandfather had presented to the little corporal in token of surrender to the Republic, for he shot himself. The heavy sword, unsheathed, grey as that November morning, sharp as childbirth, mortal. When my husband saw my companion, he observed, let the blind lead the blind, eh? But even the youth be as besotted as you? I think she was truly blind to her own desires when she took my ring. Give it back, whore! The fires in the opal had all died down. I gladly slipped it from my fingers. Even in that dolorous place, my heart was lighter for the lack of it. My husband took it lovingly and lodged it onto the tips of his little finger. It would go no further. It will serve me for a dozen more fiancés, he said. To the block, woman. No, leave the boy. I shall deal with him later. Utilizing a less exalted instrument for that than the one from which I do my wife the honor of her immolation. But do not fear that in death you will be divided. Slowly, one foot free of the other, across the cobbles, the longer I dawdled over my execution, the more time it gave the avenging angel to descend. Do not loiter, girl. Do you think I shall not lose appetite for the meal if you are so longing about serving it? No, I shall grow hungrier, more ravenous, with each moment more cruel. Run to me, run! I have a place prepared for your exquisite corpse in my display of flesh. He raised the sword and cut bright segments from the air with it. But still I lingered, although my hopes, so recently raised, now began to flag. She is not here by now. A horse must have stumbled on the causeway. I plunged into the sea. One thing made me glad, that my lover would not see me die. My husband laid my branded forehead on the stone, and as he had done once before, twisted my hair into a rope and drew it away from my neck. Such a pretty neck. He said what seemed to be a generous retrospective tenderness. A neck like the stem of a young plant. I felt the silken bristle of his beard and the wet touch of his lips as he kissed my nape. Once again, of my apparel must retain only my gems. Sharp blade ripped my dress in two. It fell from me. A green moss growing on the crevices of the mounting block would be the last thing I should see in all the world. The whiz of that heavy sword. And the great battering and pounding at the gate, the jingling of the bell, the frenzied neighing of the horse. The only silence of the place shattered in an instant. Flame did not descend. The necklace did not sever. My head did not roll. For an instant, that beast wavered in the stroke. Sufficient split second of astonished indecision to let me spring upright and dart to the assistance of my lover, as he strangled silently with the great bolts that kept her out. Marquis stood transfixed, utterly dazed at a loss. It must have been as if he had been watched his beloved Tristan for the 12th and 13th time, when Tristan stirred, then leapt from his bier, the last act announcing the jaunty aria interposed from Verdi that bygones were bygones. Crying over spilled milk did not do nobody any good, and as for himself, he proposed to live happily ever after. Puppet master opened mouth, wide-eyed, impotent at the last. Saw his dolls break free of their strings, abandon their rituals he had ordained for them since time began, and start to live for themselves. King aghast witnessed the revolt of these puns. Never such a wild thing as my mother. They had seized by the winds and blown out to the sea, so that their hair was a white mane, her black listle legs exposed to the thigh, her skirt tucked around the waist, one hand on the reins of the rearing horse, while the other clasped my father's service revolver. This is getting good. Service revolver. While the other clasped my father's, and behind her the breakers of the savage indifferent sea. Like the witnesses of a furious justice, my husband stood stock still, as if she had been Medusa. The sword was still raised over his head, as in those clocking work tableaux of Bluebeard you see in glass cases at fairs. Then it was as if though a curious child pushed his sent him into the slot and set all in motion. The heavy bearded figure roared out loud, braying with fury, and wielding the honorable sword as if there were a matter of glory and death, charged us all three. On her 18th birthday, my mother had disposed a man-eating tiger that had ravaged the villages in the hills of north of Hanoi. Now, without a moment's hesitation, she raised my father's gun, took aim, and put a single, irreproachable bullet to my husband's head. We lead a quiet life, the three of us. I inherited, of course, enormous wealth, but we have given most of it away to various charities. Castle is now a school for the blind. Do I pray that the children who live there are not haunted by any sad ghosts looking for, crying for, the husband who will never return to the bloody chamber, contents of which are buried or burned, the door sealed. I thought I had right to retain sufficient funds to start a little music school here in the outskirts of Paris. And we do well enough. Sometimes we can afford to go to the opera, though and never sit in a box, of course. We know we are the source of many whisperings and much gossip, but the three of us know the truth of it, and mere chatter can never harm us. We can only bless what shall I call it, the maternal telepathy that sent my mother running headlong from the telephone to the station after I had called her that night. I never heard you cry before, she said. By way of explanation, not when you were happy, but whoever cried because of cold bath taps. I'm trained. The one I taken, she lay in her berth, sleepless as I had been. She could not find a taxi at that lonely halt. She borrowed the old Dobbin from her bemused farmer, for some internal urgency told her that she must reach me before the incoming tide seal be away from her forever. Oh, nurse, the scandalous at home. What? Interrupted my lord. On the Sunday moon, she died soon after, taking so much secret pleasure in the fact that her little girl had become a marquise. And now here I was, scarcely a penny richer, widowed at 17, in the most dubious circumstances, and busily engaged in setting up house as a piano tuner. Poor thing, passed away in such a sorry state of delusion. I don't believe my mother loves him as much as I do. No paint, no powder, no matter how thick or white, can mask the red mark on my forehead. I am glad he cannot see it, not for fear of his revulsion, since I know he sees me clearly with his heart, but because it bears my shame. And that's the Bloody Chamber. I'm glad Indiana Jones came. I'm glad the mother came in. That was a good read, wasn't it? Normally in the Bluebeard tale, it's the woman's brothers that come in and save the day. This time it was a woman's mother. A strong, smart, and brave mother. Yeah, I like that. I like the fact that that Angela Carter made the mother come in and save the day. Instead of the brothers. Yeah. But anyway, that was Bloody Chamber. Hope you all enjoyed my reading of it.